This is a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.
Good evening. Welcome to the Brighton Central School District Board of Education business meeting and budget hearing for Tuesday, January 23rd. This meeting is called to order. To begin with, as with every public meeting, we provide the opportunity for public participation. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? Seeing no one, we'll move on the agenda. First up, you all have received the agenda. Any questions with regards to our agenda tonight? Motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Carrie Lynn,
Second.
seconded by Esther. All those in favor? We also have the minutes from our January 9th education meeting. Does anyone have any changes or questions or edits with regards to those minutes? Motion to approve the January 9th education meeting minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Karen,
Second.
seconded by Sue. All those in favor?
Aye.
Wouldn't be a public meeting without a discussion on budget. And we're fortunate to have Lou Alimo to talk to us tonight with a first look at our budget review. Lou.
Good evening. So tonight we get a little bit more into the weeds in the budget development process. This is a visual we show almost each budget presentation with our process. We updated in the fall, our needs assessment, the issues identified, but right now we're designing our plans and determining our financial capabilities. So with that, the next meeting will be our blueprint updates. You'll get more specific proposals and initiative updates. So first we go over our budget guidelines, the key budget guidelines that were adopted by the Board of Education. And what I wanted to point out, just in the opening bullets here, understand the short and long-term changes to Foundation Aid formula. So we have the governor's executive budget proposal. We're trying to understand that, any changes in the formula within Foundation Aid. Still going through with professional organizations to understand the formula, if there's been any overrides or changes to the formula that may impact us this year and in the future. And then we do have the American Recovery and Investment Act expiring at the end of this fiscal year. So we've been really strategic over the last couple of years preparing for the phase out of the federal funds. So we're in good shape for that, but there will be a significant drop off of federal funding at the end of this year. Certainly as we're prioritizing the allocation of resources, we're looking at our blueprint and our priority areas, and you can see those listed here. And then one of the things the Board of Education has committed to is complying with the New York State tax cap, and staying within those financial parameters. And we'll talk about the implications of that in this budget presentation as well. Key dates, you can see where we are January, so we won't have another budget update in February. So a lot of the work will continue as far as the reconciliation, budget to actual projections, looking at assumptions, and we'll be able to better define what the numbers look like on the expenditure side at that February meeting, and then moving into the community budget forums, and then working towards the executive budget proposal at the end of March, ultimately with the statewide annual vote on May 21st. So big picture, a chart that you've seen every year, a high-level allocation of our spending and the categories. You could see about just less than 70% is salaries and wages. Obviously, we're a people and a service industry, so that's going to command the most of our attention and the most reconciliation. Then we go into the BOCES, our debt and capital, and we've been talking frequently about investment in capital and maintaining this this pie within our spending allocations, and then all the other services and supplies that round out our spending. So the purpose of this presentation is to disaggregate those, give you a little bit more information about the cost drivers within each of the area and what we're working on right now. So starting with salaries and wages. So again, disaggregating that first pie chart, you can see teacher salaries is our biggest expense component within there, and you can see the growth over the last 3 budgets. That's attributable to our investment with the with the federal funds, and the addition of many teaching positions to address kind of the post-COVID needs that have emerged. Then we look at our clerical and non-instructional supports. Cost drivers there are the changes in minimum wage, so the wages in that area are escalating at a rate greater than we've been used to over the past several years. Just this year, minimum wage went up close to 6%. So that's something that'll continue pressure on spending in that areas, although staffing levels have been pretty steady. Instructional support, a lot of our paraprofessionals roll up into there. We have needed to add a bunch of staffs in response to student needs, but that's also minimum wage and the hourly wage pressures also are significant cost drivers within that area. Same with custodial operations, minimum wage, our hourly. Again, generally steady staffing levels there, but escalation in costs as wages escalate, and there's competition within private sector, there. You can see some of the other areas and where we're looking at. So the main budget factors and what we're continuing to assess, contractual increases, that's the easy part. We know what our contracts are. We do have a couple of expiring contracts that we'll be negotiating, so we'll prudently plan for those. The changes in mandates. So that's one area where we really don't have a good sense of those changes in mandates. We'll certainly see what comes out in the state budget, but mandates that are specific to student needs, a lot of that happens in the CSE season, which Mrs. Spagnola leads more in the springtime. So we have to make some projections on what services may be required for our students. Investment in the blueprint priorities, we'll hear that, proposed initiatives in the coming meetings. Changes in enrollment and how that shifts and requires maybe additional staffing allocations or where there's opportunities to shift staffing. The selection of electives at the high school level. Again, we're unique in that we respond to student choice. So we're setting our staffing levels based on input from our students, not just saying you're going to have 12 social studies teachers figure out what courses you're going to offer. We make it so that our students are interested in these level of courses within the core and special subject areas, and we adjust staffing in response to those needs. The shifting of positions from the federal fund to the general fund, again, we've been doing that over the last couple of years, so we're prepared for that expiration of federal funds. And then I talked about the minimum wage pressures and wage competition across different industries. Just to remind our investment in our teachers, who again, who are driving our operation, that's the core of the service, and you can see what we've added in this budget that will continue to support in the upcoming budget. Some other districts have invested in teaching positions as an infusion of support. Ours, we're building up a foundational support that are planned to continue an investment in, and that was part of our application with federal programming. How are we going to continue that? So a lot of the increases in foundation aid that we were benefited from over these last couple of years have allowed us to build a long-term plan to continue to fund those positions and make that as part of our base service to our community and to our students, as opposed to just a short-term infusion of support. We have updated our enrollment projections, been working closely with our principals to look at what our enrollment projections are, what are the assumptions that are used in our model, and what the resulting class size is. So updating those projections and then looking at our K-5 enrollments, you can see on the right-hand side here, based on our enrollment projections, if we wanted equity within the class sizes K through 5, again, you can see what the ratio would be with any adjustments, and then what the impact would be if you add a teacher or you subtract a teacher. So based on this model, if we wanted to achieve these class sizes, would require the addition of 2.0 FTE. In addition to just enrollment shifts, we're looking at higher need for risk provisions, especially in the area of English as a second language, special education, and then we're responding to the expansion of the design and drawing production course at Brighton High School in the tech department. So you could see that there's a demand for additional staffing beyond what we've added with the federal funds. When we look at benefits, you could see the pie chart of our benefits. So a lot of it, about 66% of it is contractual in our health insurance and our retiree health insurance. So there's not a lot of opportunity for interventions there. Although we did offer a new plan that the Board of Education approved for our retirees that is more competitive and provided, in our opinion, a better product to our retirees at a significantly lower cost. So voluntarily we offered that to our retirees, and we were able to migrate close to 81% of retirees from the Excelis plans, Medicare plans, to the Aetna plan, which will achieve substantial savings for the district. And I want to thank Nancy Butler, who spearheaded that project and answered every question from our retirees to ensure that they understood what that change meant and how it impacted their benefits That will be a significant savings in the upcoming year. The rest of the components within our fringe benefits or our unallocated benefits relate generally to our salaries. So as our salaries go up, our workers' comp will go up, our payroll taxes will go up, our contributions to the pension systems will also increase. So as we reconcile our staffing and determine our final staffing numbers and the staffing projections, then I can update and finalize what our benefit costs will be. Looking at our BOCES and disaggregating our BOCES services, special education drives that. You can see the budgetary increases over the last few years, which are responsive to our student needs. So we have more districts in both centralized BOCES programs, and we also have an increase in services to our private schools, itinerant services that are being provided to our private and parochial schools. Our business and technology services have increased. Cybersecurity has been a significant cost driver in that, as systems, our financial management system, our student management system, all required updates and enhancements from a safety security standpoint, as well as our one-to-one technology and device program that came post-COVID. Then you have the other areas. Transportation you see as a decrease, and that's not intentional. We are hoping to continue to use BOCES as a partner for transportation to center-based programs. They, just like every other district and every other area, is struggling with a driver shortage. So they're now unable to meet our transportation needs, which is driving more cost to our contract transportation, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then occupational education, we have our students continue to express high interest in our occupational education programs. BOCES has done a phenomenal job in investing in those programs. I think the Board of Education had the opportunity to take a tour there. So we continue to support students that are pursuing those particular programs. So what we're looking at there, BOCES has published their tuition rates, and we'll be reconciling our service projections again over these next couple of weeks. So then the other areas, the services, tuitions, and supplies, again, try to disaggregate the major cost drivers and the service and supplies that we're providing. Contract transportation continues to be the most significant within this category. You could see the increases over the last couple of years budgetarily. That's a lot from CPI adjustments, but the increase in the number of out-of-district runs and the transition from BOCES transportation to our private transportation. We actually have an RFP out right now that will be closing in the next couple of weeks, and we are anticipating significant rate increase as contractors gear up for the electric bus fleets, but then also just trying to compete, and the wages for bus drivers are escalating at a much faster rate than CPI. One of our neighboring districts, when they did an RFP just last year, experienced a 24% increase in costs. If we were to have that same level of increase, it will be over $1 million increase in the expenditures just in contract transportation. And that's generally all mandated services. So we'll talk about financing strategies to build into until the aid can catch up with that. But from a tax cap standpoint, if it's $1 million just in transportation expense, that it completely exhausts any new money that would be in the tax cap, as well as any increases in foundation aid. All that money would need to be fronted. So then we look at special education contracts and tuitions. Again, that's all in response to mandates. As we assess our students' needs and they're placed appropriately, then we need to be prepared to respond for the corresponding costs. Utilities and custodial, again, looking at that, we are experiencing, just like we are at our home, significant increases in utility rates, delivery charges that we need to be responsive to. It's our responsibility to manage consumption, and we're working on that as a team. But the unit costs of utilities is increasing at a much higher rate than the rate of inflation that's afforded in the tax cap calculations. And then you can see some of the other areas that, again, we're reconciling and we're responding to increases in either mandates or service demands. From a capital standpoint, this is the slide that Jason Swartz presented at TCMS, and this is our opportunity for reinvestment. So on February 7th, we have a vote for a capital project that would allow us to achieve the stability in the tax levy that's outlined in this bar graph. So with that new project, we'd be able to reinvest debt that's coming off our books that essentially has been satisfied and allow us to reinvest there, so that portion of our spending as well as that portion of the levy remains stable. And that's our goal, right? Stability. We want to be able to continue to invest our stability at neutral impact to our local taxes. So again, just an overview of the capital project. We're requesting authorization from the community for $21,850,000. Of that, $4.85 million would be paid for from our capital reserve fund, and within that, we would have full reinvestment of the proceeds from the sale of Brookside. That allows us to achieve no impact on our local tax levy. Again, it's a full reinvestment. No, I don't mean to use that phrase, but no new taxes. It's what you're already paying. You'll continue to ask to be paid towards improvements of our facilities. That date will be on February 7th. Polls open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And we are going to have a public hearing, and we're going to have an opportunity for the community to do a walkabout within this room. We're going to have our design professionals, we're going to have our engineers talking about the project, what the objectives of the project are, and how we hope to achieve those goals. Those goals are outlined here. All the information is on our website. I encourage anyone to read through it, look through what the schematics are, the high-level schematics. Really excited about being able to achieve what's outlined on this slide. So on the revenue side of the budget, quickly, we have the governor's runs, which I shared that we're trying to reconcile. We're trying to get the detail behind participating in webinars to understand, how the formulas have been driven. When we look at foundation aid, about a 4% increase in foundation aid over the past couple of years. That's a good number, generally, 4%, but I'm trying to figure out what's different. When we look at Questar, who's our state aid planning agency, when they run the numbers based on our November data, it shows that we should be getting a couple $100,000 more. So we're trying to understand what that discrepancy is and, again, reconcile those formulas. So this portion of it, the $19.7 million, is the unrestricted revenue. That's what's to support program. That's what's supposed to support the inflationary growth. So a 4% increase in just this $19 million versus the $100 million on the expense side. Everything to the right here is generally expense-based aids. So we're already spending it and we're getting reimbursed. We're going to continue to spend it and we're going to continue that money. So that really doesn't help us with the inflationary factors and the pressures that's on the property tax, local property taxes. High level of revenues, you can see the different components of our revenues. And what it shows is our preliminary, again, at this point in time, what my best estimate is for our changes in revenues. And then what we have here is proportion of spending. So for instance, we budget for a $74,000 increase in sales tax. That would allow for a 0.1% increase in spending. When we look at all of our local sources, so even the 4% increase in state and federal aid, that allows our spending to only go up 1.3%. So again, with all those spending pressures that I talked about, the increase in state and federal aid supports a 1.3% increase in spending. The tax levy is computing about 1.9%. That allows for a 0.5% increase in spending. So even though we get, the formula that generates 1.8 in new money and property taxes, when you apply that and proportion it against our spending, it only allows for a 0.5% increase in spending. So you can see here I've also proposing to increase preliminarily our appropriated fund balance, and that's to offset the anticipated spending in transportation. So I'm trying to build a gap, or try to fill that gap a little bit until we get those categorical aids in the 25-26 school year. So that's something we're going to need to talk about, use of our reserves and the financing strategies. Overall, our team is projecting a 3.2% increase in revenues. So that's kind of our starting point, and we'll be able to better define if there is a gap between spending projections and the revenue, as again we reconcile staffing, benefits, and all the other services that we provide. So our next steps, just that, is to continue to monitor budget to actual. Again, we want to be as accurate as we can. We also want to prudently plan for the risk that's inherent in our budget. We want to look at our reserves and our different financing sources, and again, we're building this year's budget with 3-year budgets in mind, right? So we don't want to do anything that jeopardizes the next couple of budgets. So we're really thinking about it over a 3-year period and how we're going to be thoughtful in funding everything we want to achieve and in response to the mandates. There will be a community thought exchange that will be launched. The superintendent will administer that, and then he'll report back out at a future meeting. And then certainly we're always continuing for advocacy for additional funding and mandate relief. At least help us pay for the things that we're obligated to do if you're not going to give us the flexibility in spending in different, maybe more creative models. So with that, I entertain any questions or requests for additional data or information.
Just a couple quick comments, and then I'll see if the board wants to add anything first. I think it's possibly confusing for people to understand the February 7th vote, which is for a specific capital project, and the vote scheduled as it is every year for May for the annual budget, which is May 21st. Outside of the couple of slides you had that were focused on the capital project, which is the February 7th vote, this sort of takes a longer look at the year, obviously, and gets us ready for that May 21st vote as we go through some of that. Just want to put that out there so there's not too much confusion.
Thank you.
I do also want to say this, and you mentioned it early on, we are a people business, and Dr. McGowan says this frequently. 70%, give or take, of our budget is for people, and that's salary and wages, obviously. I'm sorry, salary and benefits, wages and benefits. I did know you said this, and it was said in your narrative, but I think it's important to point out, it's been important for this board as representatives for the community to make sure that people working with our kids are able to make a living wage. So you talked to getting positions up to living wages, and that was those were things that we had to budget for. We had to move some things around for, but it's important because we want the people working with our kids in any capacity, whether it's teaching or supporting the buildings or anything, to have a wage that they can quite literally live on. So I appreciate the efforts your team did to undertake that. Very important. February 7th votes, there's going to be a lot of communication on that. We got postcards going out, and that's very important. We hope to get people to what I would call an out-of-cycle vote, because we don't typically have votes in February. Dr. McGowan talks a lot about the car payment. Those of us who have cars and get new cars sometimes sort of keep that car payment in our budget, and that's the intent of this project, so that when you talk about no impact to taxes, it stays within that dollar we consistently budget every year to pay for capital projects. So I appreciate the planning associated with that, because a lot of work's getting done behind the walls and in front of the walls to get our schools sort of updated. So again, thanks to you and your buildings team for that as well. Questions or comments from the board? I'm looking at Karen, who's one of our representatives on the legislative committee. I would fail if we didn't also acknowledge the work she's doing, trying to advocate for our public servants to sort of understand our costs and do things that sort of help us understand and make sure we're taking care of all of our kids, but all of the systems that also take care of all of our kids. So I appreciate the time you're spending on legislative to have sort of our politicians hear the sort of challenges we have ahead. So thank you for that. Other questions? Good.
Do we have an idea of what our tax cap will be this year?
Just over 1.8%.
Thank you.
Great question. Seeing no other questions, we'll move on. Next up, we've talked about it a little bit, and that is the approval for the election inspectors for the February 7th, 2024 capital project vote. If you're going to have a vote, you need to have people working that vote. So we've received a list of folks who, and you've all had a chance to see that. Any questions with regards to these people who've signed up to work?
Nope.
Motion to approve the election inspectors for the February 7th capital project vote.
So moved.
Moved by Carrie Lynn,
Second.
seconded by Christina. All those in favor? Next up, not as comfortable a topic, approval of first read policy, policy 6123 regarding workplace violence. New York State passed a law on January 4th with regards to workplace violence. This will be a new policy for us that we will put in place I always look at Christina for this, the 20 or 30 subcommittees we have. The safety committee is one of them. Dr. Gasparino serves on that on behalf of the board, and this will be reviewed on the safety committee. Is it later this week or next week?
This Thursday.
This Thursday. So this is the first read on that policy. You'll have a chance to review it. And again, in compliance with the new state law that went into effect on January 4th. Any questions in regards to the first read? Motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Susan,
Second.
seconded by Esther. All those in favor?
Aye.
Bids, we've got a bunch of bids for cooperative bid for medical trainer supplies, cooperative bid for health and safety supplies, and a cooperative custodial supply bid. You had a chance to see those bids. Any questions?
No.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Karen,
Second.
seconded by Carrie Lynn. All those in favor?
Aye.
On to our reports. First, we'll have financial reports, and we always do a separate approval for those. I will make note in regards to number 3, which is the extra classroom activity report for the period ending June 30th, 2023. The audit committee, subcommittee of the board, which is Christina, Karen, and myself, had a chance to review this report and also the associated corrective action plan summary that we've put in place to continue to have tight fiscal controls. So with regards to the executive summary, the treasurer's report, and the extra classroom activity report, and the control cycle audit for the period ending June 30th. Are there any questions with regards to any of those financial reports? You've all received those, had a chance to review them. Motion to approve the financial reports.
So moved.
Moved by Susan,
Second.
seconded by Christina. All those in favor? Now, sorry, my system's working a little bit slowly here. On to other reports. Layla, our student representative, welcome.
Hi. I'm not sure how that'll be just because my throat isn't the best. I'll do my best. Okay. Firstly, for clubs, Brighton Red Cross plans to hold a blood drive Saturday, February 10th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. in the high school cafeteria. The Galaxy Literature and Art magazine held their disco-themed soiree January 19th, which featured a cappella groups and individuals performing. Model UN attended their second conference of the year in Syracuse and won Best Delegation, in addition to 6 individual students winning awards. Friend and Me is hosting a meeting this Thursday to write cards for hospital workers. Girl Up hosted the Dean of the School of Engineering at the U of R as a guest speaker. Some leaders of the Brighton High School Climate Club traveled to Albany today to rally and lobby to pass the New York Heat Act. And the South Asian Student Society celebrated Lori with a kite flying party on the 19th. As for Executive Council, we are in the middle of planning the second annual Winter Dance, which will be held February 2nd from 7 to 10 p.m. We're also preparing for the Winter Pep Rally, which will occur the following Friday at the end of the school day. In other news, the a cappella groups at the high school performed at Acapalooza, which featured brunettes, Macapella, and Crazy Pitches. 15 students who are taking AP Literature traveled to New York City to experience 2 Shakespeare plays during the first weekend of January. And the Junior Class Council will be holding a fundraiser at the 12 Corners Panera February 2nd from 4 to 8 p.m.
Wow, there's always a ton of things going on. Thank you, when you're not at quite 100%, for making the time to come in and do an update on behalf of the high school, so much appreciated. Board of Education, first of the 25-something subcommittees and task force and all those other things, we have the Monroe County School Board Association committees. First up is Labor Relations. I was able to attend that launch last week. It had to do with intensive negotiations with any of the bargaining units in a school district and some of the ways to try to be successful and sort of establish joint and aligned goals. Always appreciative of the fact that within our community, people are wanting to work towards solutions, and we have great leadership within our bargaining unit. So it was informative and great chance to sort of compare how we do to some other school districts. So grateful there. Information exchange.
Information exchange, did anyone attend in person?
I attended.
Excellent.
So on January 10th, we had Monroe County School Boards offered a presentation at the Rochester Museum and Science Center on the upcoming solar eclipse, which we will see on April 8th. Great presentation, talked about a lot of educational opportunities, what will actually happen in Rochester during the eclipse. People from districts all over Monroe County and the region attended, and it was a really cool night. I have it posted if any of you would like to see it. I have a link to it.
I wasn't able to attend in person, but watched it later, and so just so everyone knows, these are some interesting facts. So it will begin at 2:07, and it's a total eclipse, which is very, very rare. And the next total solar eclipse that will occur in Rochester isn't until the year 2144. And so just to show the significance of this and how excited
Rarity.
Everybody is about this. So that's 120 years past this one. So
And
amazing.
even if it's cloudy, we have been reassured we
Yes.
will still experience totality.
Ooh, okay. And that's a half day. We know already now that that's a half day for Brighton
Okay.
students. Some schools have the whole day off, and some schools have a half day. So we'll have a half day on that day.
And they anticipate, because it begins at 2:07, totality lasts for a little while, then it ends at 4:33. So they're anticipating that afternoon and directly following the eclipse. There's 300,000 additional people going to be in Rochester, and they're worried right at that 4:30, 5 o'clock period, right when it's over, the roads will be very packed with cars. So it's, kids should all be home safe.
Safely
Yep.
home and
Mhm.
productive. Great. Thank you. Legislative.
I also attended that. So January 3rd, we came right out of the gate into the new year. We did a review of our advocacy day back in December and began to plan for the legislative breakfast, which is coming up on February 3rd, and as well talked about our upcoming Albany trip in March. And what I will say about this year, the theme of this year, is that we've had a lot of FaceTime with our representatives, both local and then folks who are representing us statewide, which has been really great. We didn't, during the pandemic and even last year, we didn't really get those face-to-face conversations, and it's been really important to have as we move out of that sort of foundation aid era we all talked about for so long, and into the nitty-gritty with the tax cap, with some upcoming challenges we all face, good challenges, right? We want folks to have that increase in minimum wage, we want to see electric buses on the road, but we're going to have to explore a lot of solutions surrounding the tax cap for how we fund that appropriately. So lots of good conversations to be had, and if you have not signed up yet for legislative breakfast, I encourage you all to do that, as well as for the Albany trip.
So the legislative breakfast is Saturday, February 3rd, and the Albany trip is on a Monday,
Is March 4th.
March 4th.
Yeah, but we're taking the train. I'm excited.
Train is fun. It's an early start to the day. All right, that's BOCES, reporting on behalf of our former board president, Mark Kokanovich. Just a quick update here. And I'll always acknowledge, grateful that Mark is willing to take on this responsibility. Those of us who had a chance to tour BOCES a couple of months ago, just blown away, just outstanding, the work that's being done over there. BOCES Board of Ed received presentations and reviewed school year 24-25 budgets for special education, EMCC, which is Eastern Monroe Career Center, and the multi-focus budget categories. Also received a presentation on the O'Connor Academy Community Win Initiative. O'Connor Academy is the Monroe 1 Special Education High School grades 9 to 12. WIN is an acronym for What I Need, and is a full school initiative designed to meet the needs for individual students to meet their needs to regulate prior to beginning their academic day. It is structured time at the beginning of each day for students to regulate, to be in a good place to begin their day. We did hear from the O'Connor Academy principal and assistant principal when we were over there. Just really cool stuff being done. So thankful for Mark taking on that work for us. Other board member reports, I'll start with you, Christina.
So today we had an audit committee meeting, and several of the things that we went over, the New York State Comptroller's Office puts out a fiscal stress monitoring system report, which our Deputy Superintendent, Lou Alimo, and Dahlia Watts, our District Treasurer, talked us through that report, which really is a comparative report across New York State, and how our districts might be stressed financially. And because of the great work that we do, we really have very little financial stress on our district. They're constantly monitoring and analyzing our financial health, and so we're really lucky. There were some, environmental factors that are a little bit stressed, but those are things that we want to see, I think, because we're really providing services in our community, both in special education and English learning, English language learners, which does, impact our budget, and I think in good ways, because those are things that we're really doing to serve the needs of our students. So that was one of the things that we went over today. Another thing that we did is that we did get an audit report from our Comptroller's Office, and we went over a corrective action plan summary as a committee, and we made some plans in place to sort of change perhaps some processes, procedures, think about how we wanted to communicate both from Lou and Dahlia to the audit committee and to the board. So that was very helpful and good to think through those processes every. at every audit. And then we have regular processes where we look at the claims audit report and we review some of the things that we saw today in Lou's report.
It's also great to get objective, as you pointed out, objective feedback from the state, talking about the quality of our sort of fiscal situation, and hear that from an independent auditor is always gratifying. Sue?
I have nothing. I'm looking forward to Safety Committee this Thursday.
Karen?
I've been able to attend 2 PTSA meetings, one back in December, one just last week. Always grateful to the parents, community members that we have, Dr. Love included, who are out there doing awesome things for kids. It is always busy at the PTSA table, and I love to see that we have both some traditions that continue for our kids and then other new traditions that have come on board and online. So always appreciative of that work. I also met with the school-based equity team at 12 Corners on January 4th, where we're talking about how kids feel safe and included in sort of unstructured areas of their day during passing time before school, after school. And that's a result of surveying the students there, talking about places they feel like they could feel more included or need improvement in their day. So,
Great.
that's what I got.
Thank you. Esther?
We had a meeting, Curriculum Council had a meeting on the 18th, and we are continuing our work in content-specific teams, identifying exemplars for our transfer goals. And each team focuses on one of 6 subjects. Those subjects are health, social studies, science, ELA, world language, and math. And the transfer goals define what we want our students to independently be able to do with their disciplinary knowledge and skills in the long run. And each transfer goal is appropriate for each level of school. So for, obviously Council Rock is looking for a different transfer goal than our high school. And it is assumed that the students will be applying their knowledge and skills to complete a complex task out once they leave our buildings. It's really exciting. It's a little confusing what we're doing now. Both Carrie Lynn and I are on the committee, but it's really exciting work, and we're really learning what we need to do to complete going on through with what we do with the profile of a graduate. It's all connected. So that's Curriculum Council. Hiring Practices Committee was canceled this month. We are meeting in February.
Perfect. It's a lot to undertake for Curriculum Council. That's like a big piece of the pie to take on.
It's a lot,
Yeah.
yeah. It's really, to say the least, right, Carrie Lynn? Carrie Lynn, right?
Thank you. Carrie Lynn?
Just to piggyback on that, the Curriculum Council it consists of district administrators, teachers, community members, parents. It's really great to be in this room led by Dr. Rio and Julie Kopp, and just hearing everybody's opinions and really getting on the same page with what we're trying to get our students to achieve by the end of their career here in Brighton. So that was great. And I did not mention that last month I attended the Families of Color meeting. It was great to be there, meet new families that I hadn't met before. Dr. Glazer did an awesome presentation on technology tools that are available to our students K through 12. It was a lot of great learning for me to know what we have offered for our students and families and how we're working to utilize technology to close some of those gaps that we're seeing in learning as impact of the pandemic. So it was exciting to get to a different group and meet some new people and get myself out there.
I'll just thank you very much. I'll just quickly add, we have so much construction going on in all phases, planning, strategizing, underway, finishing up, punch lists, all this other stuff. I say this every time, and I'll continue to say every time, our buildings team is fantastic. John Novelli, Rob Luce, and a whole bunch of other folks who are watching out for the kids, watching out for our schools, and making sure we're creating the best possible learning environment. Continue to be grateful to all of them for the work they do. Let's see. Nicole, BTA.
Hey, lots of great pictures this time. I don't know if you've looked through them. I was like, oh my goodness. So for Council Rock, you'll hear a lot of the habits of mind. Mrs. Teese's class having their winter garden party in the Friendship Garden, which is right outside the 4 kindergarten rooms. They had chocolate, they had hot chocolate, cookies, and a story. They were using the habits of mind, gathering data through all senses in clear and precise language to describe their exploration with the snow, which you can see some friends really had a good time.
They are well geared in hats
Oh
and
my
everything.
gosh.
It was well geared.
It looked like so much fun. Second graders in extended studies cluster groups also use habits of mind, thinking flexibly, striving for accuracy, to do artwork designed from their handprints. And they sold these as a fundraiser for Bell's Buds Dog Rescue for $930 donation and Wild Wings for $200. They were very happy to contribute to our community. Back to Mrs. Teese's class, they're having fun, using the habits of mind of flexibility, problem solving, and creative thinking. They designed dens for stuffed animals, so they had all sorts of materials they could use, and then they made sure that they were warm by putting a fan on them to see what would happen. So it's super cute. You can see some cute smiling faces there. And it was International STEM Day on November 8th. Mrs. Porta's second graders had a whole day full of STEM fun. Again, habits of mind, persistence, working interdependently. They had engineering and coding challenges, a science experiment, and a visit from an optical engineer who's a parent in our district. They spent the whole day building. They did experiments. They learned about optics, and then Dr. Boat came and taught them more about optics. They had the vocabulary that they needed. She showed them how polarized lenses work, how light travels, how crystal sheets help us see things and what kinds of gases are on planets. She showed water beads, just a wonderful, wonderful time. And then she gave them little prisms that they can use to carry around to find rainbows. And then they finished with coding in our Hab Lab, and they coded Dash robots to behave like chameleons, which was part of our Wit and Wisdom module, and they changed color with every new piece of paper that they went to. So they had a great time, and you can see the little robot with the photos.
Also picked up a new word, scientific.
I know, scientific.
Well done.
That
Well
is
done.
definitely a Mrs. Porto word. Huge shout out to Katie Covert, who made it her mission to go around Fres and document as many things happening as she could. So you can see Mrs. Ackerman's fourth graders identified different languages. They ended up having Hebrew, Ukrainian, Thai, Arabic, Hindi, Mandarin, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, English, and American Sign Language just in their class. So what a great way to show the diversity. There was a shout out to Marguerite Opet, who was named a modern counselor. Then you see Mrs. Gottfried's class, who were testing systems of moving water. They had a lot of constraints they had to do, but then they were able to share out their designs and revise to make it work. The most interesting one was that the beakers had to be 100 centimeters apart.
Wow.
So they had to make it travel that far. So you can see lots of work going on, lots of hands-on work. Mrs. Higgins' fourth grade class was working on Wit and Wisdom. During their ELA block, they used fiction and nonfiction to compare the heart in figurative and literal terms. So you can see some friends working hard with a fun hat too. Mrs. McSweeney's fourth graders, this is just during their ELA block where they're doing independent reading, also math work and partner work using their iPads. So again, all the kids doing wonderful things. Mrs. Maz's students were in Mr. Simmons' room during science class. They were using nonfiction skills to work through a super science magazine. So again, you see lots of collaboration. Miss Giordano's fifth graders, as part of their ELA block, they're reading a novel called Rules. So while she was working with one group, everyone else was working, and I think that this was tongue-in-cheek, everyone's favorite grammar and punctuation work. I'm thinking that was maybe a little bit of a joke, that maybe it's not their favorite. Mrs. Simmons' third graders identifying main idea and details using the fantastic undersea life of Jacques Cousteau, also part of our Wit and Wisdom. Mrs. Easterly's fourth graders, projects they also were doing for Wit and Wisdom, the figurative and literal heart. So they created games and activities and invited families to come and see them. And it's really great work. Mrs. Willis's fourth grade students, so some classes have a soft start to their morning where they can pick an activity that they would like to do. So you can see some reading happening, some writing, watercolor painting, and some bowling, which is a very creative bowling alley they made here.
Cool.
Mrs. Ackerman's fourth graders also having a soft start. There was multiplication Jenga, dreidel building, and making geometric shapes to show shape pieces, and then some reading in a novel. So you can see all those friends. Mrs. Holfit's third graders who were using tiles to work on multiplication arrays, and they also, in the second set, they're working on Wit and Wisdom, some new vocabulary on the whiteboards. Awesome work. At TCMS, it was the 13th annual gingerbread house building event. So they went through and learned the origins of gingerbread and the stories of the Brothers Grimm, and then they made their own gingerbread houses, and these were the winners of the favorite houses. At BHS, the Muslim Student Association wanted to share and spread a message of positivity and peace, so they made cards and chocolates for faculty and staff. And this one was pretty amazing when I read through it. Miss Galusha's Studio Art 2. It's a new course for functional skills students in a smaller setting to explore with art materials and ideas. So they worked on found object portrait collages, and they displayed these at the January art show at BHS. So it would be in that big display area at BHS. They researched artists, they look at how that transformation happens. Then they turned the room into a flea market so that they could kind of go around and pick the found items that they wanted. They learned attachment techniques, and their final pieces are really beautiful, really extraordinary. And then you can see one friend posing with his at BHS there. Mr. Conroy's economics and college economic classes, they had the Shinshanim come, who delivered a lesson on the Israeli economy, looked at parallels and differences between the two economic systems. He was just so grateful that they were able to come, and the importance of the cultural exchange between us and our friends in Modi'in.
Great
That's
picture
it.
at the start and beginning in particular. That's a great landscape there. Wow.
Right? Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Try and give you guys a little something. I still have.
Tons of stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Well done. PTSA update, Dr. Love.
Sure, thank you. So I'm happy to report on some events and activities that have been hosted by the PTSA and reported by the building chairs representatives this month. So at 12 Corners, there were a number of PTSA-sponsored events. The PTSA hosted Amy Sensi Connor is the hospitality chair, and she supplied 150 thank you cards and treats to the staff at TCMS, and they were delivered to the faculty mailboxes on the 22nd of December. So the PTSA would like to thank Amy for her efforts. Mrs. Edmonds hosted a virtual meeting at TCMS, and it was held on Wednesday, January 17th. She had two guest speakers, Greg Hall from Custodio, which is a technology device monitoring app company, and Stacy Kugel, who is the 6th to 12th grade instructional technology coach for Brighton Central School District. The topics discussed included technologies to monitor students' devices, that are provided by the school district, and also to talk about the district's instructional tools. The sixth grade orientation, the sixth grade parent orientation meeting was actually held this evening, and the building chair, Laura Bryman, spoke with parents about the PTSA and encouraged them to get involved. And I'm sure that the sixth graders will enjoy their activity night, which is coming up on February 2nd. At Council Rock, in the month of December, there were a number of different events. The students had an opportunity to sample seaweed snacks for their Fun Food Friday event. And yes, and the second graders enjoyed a movie night. And the staff, the PTSA supplied the staff with hot chocolate and snacks. And the principal hosted a meeting, and the topic discussed was diversity, equity, and inclusion. In the month of January, there have already been a number of events that have passed. There was a community service book and toy drive. On the 18th, the incoming kindergarten information night was held, and the PTSA building chairs were on there to discuss the PTSA and encourage activity within PTSA. And then later on this month, or perhaps for the whole month, the PTSA will also provide snacks for the staff. And the PTSA continues to encourage people, the teachers, to take photos and share them for the yearbook. Parents are encouraged to volunteer with the library. And finally, the students will have an opportunity this time in January to sample pumpkin seeds that are produced locally. Lots of great stuff.
Yeah, lots of great stuff. Also, a personal thanks, Dr. Love. You provided us with some great suggestions with regards to Martin Luther King Day, some different things to look at, some different resources, and those are all under review now, so appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Thank you.
Well, I would ask for the superintendent's report, but we've got a problem, that the superintendent isn't here. He's actually in Guatemala. And I'll read a quick update and then ask Dan Goldman to play a clip from Dr. McGowan. We're very excited to have word back from Dr. McGowan, who is currently in Guatemala participating in the Life Touch Memory Mission. Dr. McGowan was asked as the Superintendent of the Year to represent the National Superintendents Association, AASA, and joined 40 other volunteers on a trip sponsored by and organized by Life Touch. This mission, the 23rd they have taken volunteers on and provided complete funding for, involves assisting in building classroom space for members of the underserved indigenous Guatemalan population and working with their students, teachers, and local residents on this cultural and educational exchange. The group has been working with the nonprofit Hug It Forward to use recycled water bottles and non-organic garbage to install ecologically friendly bottle bricks that form the inside of each classroom wall. Dr. McGowan has been working with Hug It Forward on this trip to explore service trip options for Brighton students and connected yesterday with students at TCMS about the trip. He's looking forward to connecting Hug It Forward with the district for Brighton Believes Day and sharing his experiences with any classes or groups in the district that would like to learn more about the experience, the struggles for inclusion and equity experienced by the indigenous Mayan population in Guatemala, or the many ways that we can learn from the Guatemalan experience as it relates to politics, social justice, and sustainability. We have a quick clip that Dan has booted up for us. Dan, we can go ahead.
Hola, buenos días. Hola, buenos días. I'm with I'm with some of my friends in Guatemala, and I want to thank the board and everybody else for their support in kind of holding down the fort and everything back at school, as everybody always does, probably just fine, in fact better without me getting in your way. However, I am here in Shepatan, the school that we're working on with the Life Touch Memory Mission, and as part of the superintendent's report tonight, just was going to say hello and tell you a little bit about what we're doing. We're working on a bottle classroom. The Life Touch Memory Mission for 24 years has traveled around the world supporting people in developing places. in terms of promoting educational experiences for their kids. This is a Mayan village, Shepetan is, in the Pashtun region, which is not far from Tecpan, where we're staying. We flew into Guatemala City. And this community pursued this so that they could build classrooms like this bottle classroom that's been previously built to add to the educational opportunities for their kids. This is kind of their general gathering area, and the classroom specifically that we're working on. And the way the project works is we tie bottles, plastic bottles that are filled with inorganic trash, into the wall structure to form the inside of the wall. Working with the kids, the local community, in fact, they're having a meeting right now with their PTA and planners for the next classroom. There are 40 volunteers from across the country, National Elementary Principal Association, Secondary Principal Association, the Superintendent's Association, which I'm helping to represent, along with PTA, school boards, and other folks really participating in this great experience to support this community, but to be honest, to be welcomed into community with these human beings and learn more about being better world citizens and the ways we can help others. We've talked quite a bit about migration, immigration, and the experiences here, and learning from our own experiences and our country's experiences and our interactions with places like this. It's been a great experience. I appreciate the opportunity to report back and quickly say hello to everybody. I'm missing you at the board meeting, but certainly enjoying experience connecting with these great kids and families and wrapping up our classroom building today. It'll be great to see you on the other side. Looking forward to a board report to tell you more about the experience here and the village of Shepetan and the great people here that we've had a chance to get to know and work with. Thanks, everybody. Take care and have a great meeting.
Really cool. Thank you, Dan, for queuing that up, and thank you, Dr. McGowan, for preparing it. It is not a stretch to say it's probably warmer where he is than where we are right now, based on the looks of it. Consent agenda. We've got the normal set of approval of personnel changes, recommendations for the Committee on Special Ed and Preschool Special Ed, and fundraising activities as well, a good eating opportunity for the math team, exec council winter formula, and girls basketball activity nights. Questions with regards to the consent agenda? Motion to approve. Moved by Karen. Seconded by Esther. All those in favor? Quick note before we adjourn, the vote, construction project vote on February 7th in this building, 2035 Monroe Avenue. It's going to be in the gym. I'm just, 7, thank you very much. I appreciate that. 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I just want to call attention to this. It was referred to by our folks at the Curriculum Council, the profile of a grad in the newsletter that came out. Please take a minute to read this. It's just fantastic. It talks a lot about what we're trying to do with the blueprint and what we're trying to do there. So just really good work. And sometimes these things don't get looked at. I highly recommend it as a read. And finally, as always, to Mike, Bill, Violet, thank you for making the whole night work for us with all the technology and everything else. We greatly appreciate you. And for Kim, in Kevin's absence, helped me keep this meeting organized. Greatly appreciate her, Clark. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Esther.
Second?
Seconded by Sue. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
This has been a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.